product manager leading the strategy and development of Google Optimize, which is Google's conversion growth platform. And I would normally share something that kind of annoys him, but he's taken on himself to include that at the beginning of his presentation. So please welcome him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Feels like a club in here. Hello, everyone. My name is Praveen Krishnan, and I'm a senior product manager, and I manage a product called Optimize. I thought I'd start out with this, since you guys just walked in from lunch. So I saw this in the Copenhagen airport restroom, and I decided to take out my phone in a public restroom and take a picture. So this is a faucet that, you put your hand on the right side, where those three dots are, and the water starts flowing, right? And you take your hand out, the water stops. What's the problem with this design? Show of hands. Right? Needless to say, I used a napkin on the door. Anyway, cool design, but not very, cleanly. But anyway, what does this got to do with optimization? Absolutely nothing. It's just one of my pet peeves with design. So, how many of you have heard of Optimize or used Google Optimize? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, there is a lot of you, but a lot of you don't know about it. So just quick intro to the product, and I'm not going to do a sales pitch. I'm not a salesperson, but I thought I'll just give you a sense for what Optimize is. So if you are, any business, when you look at where your customers are, right? They're in the vast World Wide Web. You're going to use a tool like Google Analytics to figure out who those right customers are, who's interested in your product, right? And so you're going to find out who those right people are, and then you're going to bring them down to a group who are your prospects. And you're going to use a tool like any kind of ad product, but mostly Google ad products, to then drive those people to the front door of your business, right? And that's essentially your qualified prospects. And that's where most businesses spend a lot of time and a lot of money on. Thank you very much, by the way. But once you get there, what do? Now you have all these qualified prospects at the front door of your business, right? In which case, your website. How do you take them from that front door through your store to the cash register, right? Which is the point of conversion. Now that last mile of conversion is where Optimize comes in. And so it's Google's conversion and growth tool to drive that last mile of conversion. So I suspect most of you are marketers or involved in marketing here, or you're probably just crashing the party. So if you are a marketer, you know that your growth projects have to have this two-pronged approach, right? You need deep insights, and you need the ability to take action on it, right? And so by deep insights, we're talking about who are your users, where are they coming from, what pages are they on, how far into your site are they going, things like that, right? So you typically use a product like Google Analytics to get those deep insights. And then what do? You quickly come up with certain hypotheses, and you want to take action on those as soon as you can, right? How many of you have your dev resources that are shared, that are not like dedicated to your growth teams? Dev resource shared. Okay, so there's several of you, right? So what happens when every time you have an idea, you run up to your dev person and say, hey, can you change this site and tweak this because I had this amazing intuition from Google Analytics? And you go to them like every 3 or 4 days. What happens? They tell you to get in line, right? Because they have a huge backlog, and they just cannot operate at the speed at which growth teams need to operate, which most of you are in growth teams, so you're thinking very fast about these things, right? So what you need is an actionability tool that can act on those insights really rapidly, and that you don't have to rely on developers to implement, right? That you as a marketer, you can go and you can make changes on your site to act on some of those insights, right? So this is about tools, right? So you need to have a set of tools that give you deep insights and that let you take action on them, right? So for the rest of my presentation, I'm going to go through some growth stories that we've heard from our customers, and also some just interesting insights that we've gathered over the years. Okay, so when you think of your customers or your prospects, typically there's two pathways that they take, right? One is your organic pathway. They find you on the internet, they click through, they Google it, and they finally land on your page, right? That's the organic pathway. The other pathway is the paid pathway, right? Now, both those pathways have two sides. There is the before the click side, and then there is the after the click side. So for the sake of the discussion today, we'll talk about the paid path, the paid journey, and the side that is after the click. Right? Because there's plenty of opportunities for growth in the area after the click. And typically, if you want to drive a lot of growth, you need to focus on optimizing both those areas, right? A lot of businesses focus on the first part. They fine-tune their ads, fine-tune their media spend strategies, but they don't spend a lot of time thinking about beyond the click, right? So in this talk, I'm going to be spending a lot more time and giving you some examples on how you can optimize that second half of the customer's journey. Everyone still with me? I know it's afternoon. Okay. So so as we've been working with a lot of customers and talking to a lot of customers, and even from my own experience prior to Google, working with several startups, we found that generally the problems in that second half tend to fall under three buckets, right? That is either your site design sucks, or the content on your site is terrible, or just your product is shit, right? So there's just a lot of different things that don't drive your growth. But here what we'll focus on is content. Now you all know that content is important, right? But where businesses take it to the next level is when they can take that content and match it to the intent of the visitor. And they're able to do that dynamically. Now that's where you start seeing a lot more interesting growth opportunities. So here's an example. So this company is a customer of ours, and they're in Singapore. So NTUC is the leading financial services provider in Singapore. They sell insurance and other products online. Now they had a problem, and their problem was low conversion rates, and as a result, high CPAs. So they wanted to fix that, right? Paid traffic, most valuable traffic, they needed to fix that. So working with a partner of ours in the region, they looked into analytics, and they started bucketing their users based on intent. And the way they figured out the intent is they looked at how far in the funnel do their visitors get, and they classified them as high intent paid media, low intent paid media, high intent organic, and low intent organic, and things like that, right? So they created various buckets. So that's that first half, right? Insights. So once they did that, then they took those audiences and started optimizing for that first half of that journey, right? Which is that before the ad click journey. So they moved those audiences into the DV360 tool and ran ad campaigns and started driving traffic to their site. But they didn't stop there. Remember the second half, right? So then they used Optimize, and for those same audiences, which they then moved from Google Analytics into Optimize, they created personalized journeys on the site for those visitors. So what happened is, if you were in that high intent paid media bucket, you would first see the ad. You click on the ad, you land on the site, and only you will see that experience where they show the discounts and some verbiage around like limited availability and things like that. Everybody else will see the normal thing, right? So they were able to now match the content with the intent of the user. And doing that, they drove up their sales by 8% and dropped their CPAs by 50%. So that was really cool. Okay, so the next one is about fixing the site design. Now, I have a soft spot for this customer. I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but whatever, I just did. So this business builds conversion optimization tools, and it's owned by a rather large software company based in California. They have an amazing product team, I have to say, and this product team really needed to drive growth on the product. I know it's the afternoon, but if you haven't caught on yet, this is Optimize, and we used Optimize on Optimize. It's a little meta. And we really wanted to drive growth. Now, we have an amazing marketing team, like top-notch, right? And so we had no problem driving top-of-the-funnel growth, right? They just crank up the gas, and we get a ton of users on the top, right, which is awesome. But the conversion activations weren't that high. So we had to dive in and figure out how to fix it. Now, I'll go through what we did, and this is not something we've publicly shared before, but we thought it'll be very useful for this group, and it's really a fun, interesting exercise that we went through. Okay, so before I get started, when we looked at our numbers and we said, okay, we found so much as our conversion drop off, right? First question my engineers asked me is that bad or is that good? I had no idea. So let me do a quick poll. What do you think is the reasonable conversion rate for an enterprise app, enterprise SaaS product? Anyone with enterprise SaaS products here? 2%? Anyone else? Roughly 2%? Okay. So it turns out that it's very difficult to figure out what an industry standard is, right? Because every app is different. It's based on the kind of app, the complexity of it, your pricing model, right? It all tends to be different. So for us, we found that we were getting about a 5% activation at the very end of our funnel, right? And when we looked at certain cohorts, we found that it wasn't ideal for us, and we wanted to drive that up, right? So, so we went into Google Analytics, and we dug through our data, and we looked at our funnel, and we found that there was just several drop-offs along our product. Now, if you've used our product, you know that it is a sort of a multi-step enterprise product, right? It does require some basic level of knowledge on, web pages and things like that. So it wasn't really the simplest thing. So being a data-driven company, we dug into our data and started looking at the numbers. But then what we also did is we started talking to our users. Now, this is something that I have not seen a lot of companies do, especially in the startup field. Because everybody's data, right? They're like, I want to be data-driven, and I don't want to really listen to what my users are saying, right? I think it's a big mistake, because when you talk to your users, you get that really important context for those numbers, right? Because from the numbers, you can't tell that someone is feeling intimidated in step number 3 of your funnel. You have no idea. So we started talking. We have a user research team, and just our designers and our product managers started talking to our customers and prospect and saying, why did you drop off the funnel here? What happened? What were you thinking? What else was going on, right? And that data is also important. So we took those two things, and then we identified some areas where we could make some changes. So in the product, we had organized our UI into different tabs, because it just made logical sense, right? Google's all about logical people. So everything was grouped into tabs because that's what we thought was cool. And then we found out that our users essentially had to do steps that involved them going through all the tabs, right? So basically you have to go through all the tabs and complete all the steps. Wasn't the best design. So we decided, let's put everything on one page, create a linear flow, right? Now, that means that users have to scroll, but we said that's okay. We think people will scroll if they see everything in one place. So that's the design we went with. And being a good growth team, we did a lot of testing on it as well. And the next thing we did was guiding the user. So in Optimize, there are several flows where you can go from start to finish, just different ways, and they're all equally valid. And we love our users. We want to give them all the options, all the different ways you could use our product. And sure enough, most of them chose the way out of the product, which is not the way we wanted them to take. So the decision we made here is we said, it's okay to have an opinion on the flow. So we wanted to create an opinionated flow for a category of users. So we decided to take the first-time users, and we said first-time users should go through this flow. and we created a guided stepper for them that walked through the various steps. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to take those steps, but it's the most efficient way for them to get to the end stage, right? So that was the other change that we made. Another area that we found was interesting was these empty states. Now, a lot of times when you get screens designed, your designers may not do it, but I've seen this in places. The design comes up with everything filled. You have a shopping cart. When you see the design, there's items on the shopping cart, right? Or there's items on the page. But a lot of times there's situations where the page is empty. There's nothing in it. So what does that page look like? So for us, what you see there was the page that a new user landed on as soon as they came onto into the app. You look at that, and there's just nothing, right? So it's okay. Let's just spruce it up a little bit, help people, learn about the product, and kind of nudge them some more. And let's be a little more friendly, right? So we changed create experience to let's go. That made it a little more funny. So that was another thing we did. And then the last thing we did was simplifying some of our instructions. Now, remember when I told you that optimize, it's, again, not the easiest, I'll admit it. And one of the things that you have to do in the product is to install a piece of JavaScript on the page that you're going to run optimize on. Now, this is very tricky because essentially the person who's in that onboarding flow is a marketer, and most of the time at this stage, they have to go and talk to their developers and have them insert the JavaScript on the page, right? It's just this major block in the flow, right? And as we established before, dev teams are busy and they never get around to doing it, right? And so we really agonized over, and we knew this step was a big stumbling block for us. So we really agonized over how do we simplify this, maybe eliminate it. We looked at all kinds of crazy ideas. They were either like too complicated or just too long to build, right? So we decided let's not make perfect the enemy of the good, and we said let's just bring it into one panel. It's still the same thing, but let's just bring it into one panel and maybe change the verbiage a bit, right? So these are the broadly 4 things we did in the product. Once we rolled that out and rolled out our tests, we found that our activations went up by 50%. And we found not just our activations going up at the bottom of the funnel, but every stage along the way, most of the stages, we expanded what our conversions were, right? About 35% all throughout, which was great. This was very exciting for us. And so we are continuously iterating on our design, our UX, and we're constantly testing. So, if some of you are optimized customers, you might notice certain things moving around. And so it's just something that we've found extremely useful for us and things that we did. So hopefully that was a little helpful for you. Okay, so the last piece in this presentation is about coordinating your ads with your web pages. Right, so this is another area that we haven't seen a lot of. We feel like more customers should take advantage of this, and we have some businesses who've really taken advantage of this and driven up their conversions. So one technique that they've used is personalization, and I know in previous discussions people have talked about personalization. So typically, and it covers so many things, right? So typically when you hear personalizations, you're hearing one-to-one personalization, right? Amazon, Praveen bought XY, he should buy ABC, right? Works great. My credit card statement is a testament to that. But the other things you could do with personalization are you're able to personalize your ads and create personalized journeys all the way into your site, right? So previously, where you had finely tuned ad campaigns directing traffic to a generic page or maybe slight variation of the page, now you could create, if you have the right tools, create entire funnels in your application that's tied to your ad campaigns or tied to your keywords or whatever it is. So you're creating sort of symmetry between your ads and your pages. So you all know this company. You don't need any introduction. Good customer of ours. So they were trying to find ways to drive up audiobook sales in Germany, and they use Optimize. And for them, it was interesting because they decided to deploy an ad campaign that had, again, about audiobooks for German users. And they decided to tie that to a personalized landing page experience that connected the ad with the landing page. Right? And they ran several tests. And by doing that, they drove up their premium subscriptions by about 24%. Now, I'm not going to go into too much details here because we're very happy to have Simon come up and go into a lot more detail on, Simon from Spotify, come up and go into a lot more detail on what they did. Okay, so I'm done, and you can be happy about that. So in summary, there's two sides, right? Don't neglect the side that's after the click, right? You really need to sort of focus on that, which I suspect most of you are doing it. Match the content with the intent, right? There's just a lot of opportunities there. And so make sure your tools are deeply connected and you can do these things really quickly. And then iterating on the UX design, right? I'm sure a lot of you have great designers, and it's sort of important that you're iterating on your design constantly, right? And then fourth part is about making sure there's symmetry between your ads and the entire site that you have, right? So I'll leave you with this. We have an amazing resource that we launched a few months ago where we pulled together a lot of interesting CRO content, and it's free. So you don't have to be an optimized customer to use it. And there's just a lot of before and afters. And I think you guys did an exercise where you showed before and after. So we have plenty of that there, interesting ideas on what to do for conversions. So so please take a look and give us any feedback if you have. All right, with that, I'm done. Any questions? Yes?
Can we use it on any CMS?
So the question was, can we use Optimize on any CMS? Yes, you can use it on any CMS. You just insert the JavaScript and you're good to go.
Is it possible to use it on live pages? Back, so you test it on the back and then...
Oh, you mean is it on the server or?
Is it production-wise or is it?
No, you could use it live, like on the client side.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll just change it.
Great.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. You've been great.